Well, hello, children. Welcome to DTLT Today. I'm glad you could join us. This is going to be a very special episode.
God. Jesus Christ. This is... I can't believe we're going to talk about Apple while you're putting your dirty feet in my face.
This is a whole...
That's like so anti-Apple. Well, it's what they really do.
Do you suppose the production manager at Mr. Rogers ever had this issue of being like, Jesus, his smelly feet?
Would you be mine?
I'm so glad you joined us here today.
Would you be mine?
So we got the red twins over here, and we got baby blue putting his socks on.
Having a hard time of it. Let's be clear. He's trying to put his socks on. Whether he'll succeed is a whole nother question. That's why I put my socks on the stairs now.
I have mad respect for Mr. Rogers right now.
It makes it look easy. Hard like,
the music is almost done, by the way.
Get there already. Here we go.
He changes his shoes though, not his socks. To be fair.
My neighbor.
Jesus.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. Neighbor.
It is pretty good.
I'm glad we're together again.
All right. So glad you could join us today.
So we're talking about iPhones now. We're talking about socks and Apple.
Socks and Apple. Both a little smelly.
But
Indeed.
never white. Both black.
We wanted to get
black-eyed.
our basic opinions out there about the Apple announcement yesterday.
Yeah. Did you watch it?
I
followed the blog?
followed
They
the
don't
live
stream it.
blog, and I never lost any live blog. I watched the Gadget, the gdgt.com, and they did a solid job. I saw other people saying that their stuff was down. I was never able to get on Twit TV, and you said you never. Did you watch?
I was on there
the whole thing?
briefly, and then by the time they had 40,000 people watching their live stream, it just fell to a crawl.
Oh, okay.
So.
Okay. But it was. I mean, it was an interesting. It was an interesting.
There's something to shoot for.
show.
Uh-huh.
And kind of had a different vibe without Steve Jobs being there. I thought.
Right. This was the first time that they'd ever done a product announcement without Steve Jobs.
Since he came back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's no longer the CEO. Tim Cook is the CEO. So.
I wonder if there isn't just a pile of potential sadness around Apple right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. No one knows, but it doesn't look like he's very well.
Well, that's the thing, is that there isn't even much communication about that, and I don't necessarily understand the corporate things that people need to deal with.
They need a cuddle couch.
They do. They could sit them all down here and just say how things are going and how they're feeling. And but anyway, to
but
get
as
to the
fanboys, which you guys are, what was your impression of yesterday's?
I am an Apple fan.
Okay, fan.
I disregard.
I am Timmy Boy.
Right. So together we're the fanboys.
Yeah, you're Apple fanboys. So
I
how did you
appreciate
feel?
Apple products. It was kind of a low key, and Tim Cook is a low key guy, a low key presenter. But it was kind of a low key presentation, and a lot of the stuff they kind of reiterated from the summer announcement of what they were going to do. The iOS 5 stuff and the apps they were going to come up with. A lot of it was kind of a rehash of that. So it was almost like they were padding this whole show to fill up the fact that there wasn't a whole lot that new that was going to be announced.
Well, it's getting to the point now where, so they had that time in the summer where they said, here, we're going to do this whole iCloud thing, and we're going to, sync all your devices from the cloud, and you can do all this great stuff, and everyone's like, oh, this is so awesome. Well, then they have the keynote yesterday, and probably at least half of it was, as you said, a rehash of it, because it's sort of like, this is what we said we were going to do, it's working, and now we're about to do this. And everyone's like, yeah, okay, show me something better. Like, I really, that's great and all, everything that you said back in the summer, but I want to be amazed right now. And already, that stuff's no longer amazing. Taking a picture and having it show up on your desktop immediately, you told me about that in the summertime. Right. It doesn't matter that it's working. It doesn't matter that, I can, type out a document on my laptop and then go to the iPad and it's already sitting there ready for me to start editing. That all doesn't matter, apparently.
And I loved your tweet during the presentation, quoting Louis C.K. It's like,
right.
Everything's amazing and nobody's happy.
We do have this. We have this tendency to be like, all that cool stuff, show me something better, I mean,
could you think about what this current phone does? In the sense of, not only is it literally a computer in your pocket. Now, it doesn't do everything creatively necessarily that you would want to do,
right.
but the fact that you can press a button and say, find me a pizza joint near where I am right now, and it comes back and it gives you all the results, and then you've got the phone numbers there to dial up. Stuff like that, 5 years ago was kind of like, geez, I don't know if we can ever pull this off, let alone what we thought about this 20 years ago and, even in the Star Trek days. So the stuff that these things can do is pretty amazing. And I also, appreciate the fact of what you said, Jim, about, so where do the people come in when it comes to this technology? What can
when did I say
people
that?
do?
I know I was very smart when I said that. When did I say that, Andy? How did I say it?
I think you tweeted
Was I
it
wearing
yesterday.
my clothes?
I don't. And were you sober?
And was this during Bob before? Because it really does matter.
I think it was yesterday, but I think you said you put more stock in people than you do machines. I think was the general phraseology.
And we've said that before, man.
Yeah,
Washington.
Sure.
Invest in people, not products.
I mean,
and
I
kind
think
of
that's
thing.
absolutely.
And my point is always, so all right, so you got these tools, and what do you do with them, and how can you use them properly and to the best benefit and that sort of thing. So
well, I mean, here's my thing on that. I do think that Apple has had the design of we were talking about this yesterday. Me and Alan were talking about the idea of the tablet, right? John Becker came in here and he had a tablet, and it's like, oh, look at that tablet. And I remember people kind of saying that tablet will change everything, and it didn't. And people saying the tablet will change everything in terms of like the iPad.
He had a netbook.
A netbook,
right?
Well, didn't it have a tablet-like base or no?
I don't think so. I think it was a netbook.
I'm referring back to the tablet where
Sure.
you could actually write on the screen.
Yep.
And there's no two ways that the design of the iPad did change things. It is going to. I mean, I don't disagree with that. I watched my daughter, during Babastock, take the iPad that I think Martha brought and play with it, and it was pretty cool to see that, But, I mean, I still think at some point that, like, the relationship we have with corporations or with vendors, just like Tom Woodward had laid out, I mean, that's not what I'm interested in. I do think that these things have potential in all these different ways, but the Apple kind of, I think, even off that point, I think the Apple thing is going to change a little with Steve Jobs, because there was a cult of personality going there that was very interesting in some ways, but very much specified on him. And it seemed like yesterday was like almost like a sober awakening of Apple fans that, wait, he's gone.
Yeah.
And there's a sad pale to it.
It's interesting that you say that, because I almost appreciated the fact that things were dialed down yesterday.
Yeah.
That things weren't, that the presentation itself wasn't a bunch of hype. It was, and this was kind of in hindsight. I think people were keyed up for this presentation and wondering, let's give this P.T. Barnum like show, and when it didn't turn out to be that way, it was kind of like there was almost anarchy in the streets, because the Apple faithful weren't getting entertained. And then as I'm watching it and then thinking about it afterwards, I'm thinking it's not bad to have this low-key company again, and maybe dialing back the expectations, and also maybe this will provide or lead to more transparency in terms of what they're doing. I don't know if
well,
Apple
you can always find
ever get there.
After a keynote that often someone will make like a supercut of all the different adjectives, and so it's like you'll find these videos where it's like amazing, magical, so super amazing, it works, boom, perfect, yeah, awesome. And it's just like when you see them all put together and it's like 10 or 15 minutes of just these adjectives, you're just like, okay, but seriously,
Right.
I mean, at some point, I mean, even when they came out with the iPad, it was like this magical device,
Right,
and it was just like, magical, I don't know, okay, yeah, maybe, but at some point you want them to back off, and I think in some ways, if I was to guess, part of it is probably that they felt in the past recently a little bit burned by certain things, when they were talking about their antenna design. They weren't, tail tucked between their legs. They were talking up yesterday about how they've adjusted the antenna. It can work with both receiving and placing calls and stuff. They didn't mention the issues they had last year where people were saying, oh, if you hold it wrong, it fucking sucks, whatever.
Yeah,
but that was the implied thing was, we've adjusted our antenna and that's working. All of the iCloud stuff, they're probably crossing their fingers hoping that it works the way they want it to, because when MobileMe came out, there was this huge thing where the servers were crashing. When you take every single Apple person that has this new product and throw them all on an email or a calendar server all at once, it's difficult. And I think they're probably trying to, set expectations accordingly by not talking it up too much.
Yeah, and there seems to be this kind of vibe around what's being introduced. In many ways, there's a lot of stuff that they could have talked about yesterday. And I wonder, it almost seems to me like there's this hesitancy about really whether they're confident, like you say, whether it's all going to work or not, and whether iCloud and iTunes match and all that stuff is going to, fall on its face, whether those data centers are ready to go to deliver all that stuff. So, maybe a low-key presentation was just their way of trying to reduce expectations. I don't know.
In my experience, I think Apple likes to perform in the market rather than make too many major promises.
Yeah.
And they'll use a lot of adjectives and stuff, but it's like, when you see these keynotes, everybody cries out, oh, why don't they have, Bluetooth, and why don't they do this? And they talk about every major new feature, that if you go to an Android phone or something, they're throwing everything under the sun into that phone, and they like to make things that work right. And so they usually don't add those features in until much later. Everybody complained about this isn't in that phone, and then a year later it might come out and they go, oh, but they don't have this, and then a year later it finally comes out. I'm trying to think.
Well, if I could speak to both your points, which are well made, and about Apple, and when I think about, I didn't even watch the keynote yesterday. I didn't follow the live blog.
You rarely do.
I really do. But as I was walking home,
you didn't get an invite.
As I was walking home, and I felt something. I don't know what it was, but I just felt something. I felt like a pal, and like sadness, and like it was a disturbance in the force, and it made me think at that moment that Apple's pretty much done as a company. That they're not going to really last out the year, probably. Okay. I think by December you'll be getting an announcement that they're done, and unfortunately, when Steve Jobs left, that was it. And I think that's just the first moment we'll realize over the next 2 months or 3 months that Apple's done.
It was as if the voice of 1,000 fanboys cried out, and they were all silent.
And they were like that. And that has happened already over in Cupertino or wherever they are, but it's going to take a little while for the rest of the people to understand that.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't happen at light speed.
There's like shadows on the wall there where people used to walk. It wouldn't work. It's a freaking nightmare. So I'm going to sell my Apple. I'm going to get right on a Dell soon.
Okay.
But here's
you always have an interesting perspective on these things, Jim, and we appreciate when you bring those to light.
Absolutely.
Big fan of yours. I read all your books.
I read all your blog posts about Apple.
So the thing that I'm interested in seeing is if this is really the first step of something bigger, and they're not wanting to talk it up and play it up. But I think the biggest thing that they mentioned yesterday was the voice personal assistant, the Siri software that they have on the new iPhone, which basically means you can ask it questions and it will answer them. So it will actually answer your question. Absolutely. Yeah, you could ask it mathematical equations, or you could say how far am I to Stafford, and it'll answer 23 miles or something like that. So that's the start of something pretty amazing. Well, that's the start of that original Apple video that John Udell pointed to in 2006 when they came to give the keynote speech here. It's what they called the navigator or whatever. It's like you would talk into the computer and it'd be like, who do I have an appointment with today? Yeah, and somebody reposted that video again. Because the date on the video when the guy was talking, if you track it back to, was September 2011. So 25 years ago, they predicted almost to the month. Now, I thought it was 2006. Is that, but there's a video from the 80s that Apple made. No, I thought it was pointed to 2006. Is that not right? But he was talking from 5 years into the future, from 2006. So math. Yeah, but here's the thing. So, the personal assistant would figure that out for you. Well, yeah. If someone was calling in 2006, 5 years out to the future, we're all going to be idiots because we're just going to have to talk into our phone to know what we're talking about. Our iPhones are making us dumber. Well, exactly. I mean, does Wikipedia make us dumber? I mean, that's the real question. At what point does technology replace, our own thinking and stuff?
There was somebody else who posted a video from Google, because Android has a similar thing with the things called, I guess, voice actions.
Yeah.
And there's a video from Google and there's a video from Apple, and they were saying that Google's video is much more kind of process oriented. Very specific things. You're looking for directions, or for it to start directions, or to
Andy
call
Rush.
somebody.
Yeah.
Whereas Apple's video is more kind of like, there's somebody who's cooking cupcakes and they need to get an ounces to metric translation or something like that. And so they ask the Siri assistant, how much is 12 ounces in whatever conversion she needs to make. And so it really was almost kind of this, here's how you would use this in real life, and that's kind of Apple's approach to the bigger picture.
Well,
whereas Google's is much more kind of, here's how to do each one of these individual tasks.
And here's what I'm interested in, is if they tie it into the applications that exist on the iPhone, not just the native ones where it can access your calendar, so it can create calendar things, but like for one of the applications, which seemed like a really weird application to market, they just mentioned it briefly, but it was the cards application, which basically meant I could go in there and say, send my mom a postcard with this photo from my phone, and they would mail an actual postcard with that picture with whatever you had typed in.
Who would?
Apple.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it ties into your Apple account. It charges you like $2.50, and it would mail an actual postcard.
So it would cost you $2.50 to mail that postcard.
Right. Yeah, and it would take the photo that was on your phone and whatever message you had done, and they would make it look all nice. Here, what happens if they tie it into the personal assistant to where I can just say, mail my mother a card on her birthday that says, "Happy birthday, Mom," and then that's it, and it's done. And it does it because it knew from your contact information who my mom was, what her birthday was, what her address is.
That's cool. What if we took that to the next level and I had the personal assistant and I said, mail Timmy Boy a black turtleneck? Would it do that? Like, could it go out and make, or however, like a maker bot or something, just like make the turtleneck and send it to you?
You're always good at taking it to the next level.
Isn't that like next level shit?
Siri,
right
sure. Yeah,
Siri, can you cut off my balls and saute them?
Siri, I want to be a medical experiment. Siri, how can you help me? That's awesome, though. It is interesting.
Is it the death of the personalization? I mean, is it the death of us, doing our own thing? Just like with Wikipedia, it was almost like in some ways, the death of in-depth research. And because at this point it was like people would just Google for something, Wikipedia would be the first result, and at this point they trust whatever it's going to say. Are we going to trust that whatever we get back from our phone is the truth?
Yeah, see, to me, it's that we live in this time of tools that are reiterating themselves, and there's lots of iterations of them that we're getting to the point where we can do so many different things that we don't even know how it's affecting us yet. Yeah. And I think we'll get to a point where some of this stuff will fall by the wayside, and we'll be able to do the things that we kind of expect. Wikipedia is nothing more than a starting point. It's a place where you go to kind of say, all right, so what articles that are out there should I be reading that are cited in this particular article? It's not a primary source. And as far as the tools go, these devices, these iDevices, allow us to kind of get things started, to try to go in a direction of accomplishing something, of creating something, of completing a task. I find myself in the Apple environment to be much more creative simply because the software is better written. If I had to do some of the things that I do on a daily basis on a PC, and I am constantly kind of trying to find out how the PC is keeping up with this stuff, it's not there. Yeah. And I think that's why people prefer the Apple. But also there's the other side of the coin. People like the Android because it isn't Apple, and it isn't closed like Apple. So I think as we go forward, people will just kind of realize that people are always going to be going off into their own different camps. We'll keep doing the things that we need to do. Hopefully we'll still have that humanization factor that runs there.
And I will say, I just got back from an Android conference, and there were real clear benefits to the other side of the camp. The reason for that, there was a guy who basically, I'm telling you,
I know, I'm
you
impressed. I can't believe it. What happened? Timmy boy,
I got drunk.
what happened?
No, like there was a guy who basically was able to develop an application in a few hours, and he wanted to use it, and it was like to be able to scan the QR codes that were on our badges and keep track of who you had met with their name and stuff. And he made this application, put it out into the market, and it was available immediately. That would not happen in the Apple world because it would get stuck in the review process of the App Store.
Yeah.
So it was like, at that point, he wouldn't have even tried to do it. But the fact that he was able to put it directly out in the market meant that it empowered him to actually sit down and try to make it, and he did. Yeah. So, you know, there's a clear benefit there. There's a benefit to the other side, the review process and making sure that it's only high-quality stuff going into the App Store. But there's a clear other side there where there's reasons for people to go that way.
Well, I mean, if you look at that, you look at the idea of review process, peer review, whatever you want to call that with Apple, and the kind of anyone do it DIY of the Apple. Like, you know, I would traditionally be with the Android. Like, hey, let anyone do it, see what works. But the phone just seems to me, and the interface just seems to me, less exciting than the iPod Touch or the iPhone, even though I don't own either. You know what I mean? But I still have to say, because I've been using a MacBook Pro for like 6-7 years now, and because I've seen the iPhone, I'd still go for the design.
Yeah. I
mean, that's someone who, you know,
well, and
doesn't have anything in the market for either one.
There still is the advantage if this is a concern, is the security issue. Right. You know, you've got someone vetting how a program is being put together. Yes, it's kind of a pain that you can't use something right away. You can't just, you know, off the cuff just design something that you can get functionality out of immediately. But you do, you know, it won't be the kind of thing that will have huge security holes in it. You know, hopefully Apple's system is better.
A political vetting. Like some things
absolutely.
don't, like there's also that. It almost seems like a form of, you know, corporate censorship.
Yep. I mean, don't come out with any kind of, you know, offensive material or, you know, anything close to pornography or having lots of nudity in it or anything like that.
And I could see that be a really compelling
let alone the violent games.
for you know, the Android versus the iPhone if it goes that route. Right. But, you know, and bringing us back to the idea of the keynote and the low-key keynote. You know, maybe they're doing the whole low-key keynote as a way to kind of find that stasis you were talking around before, where we can all catch up and take a deep breath, and maybe massage each other's foot.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe that's the time we need right now.
Other parts.
And understand where we're at.
Sure.
In, you know, our particular moment.
Should we quit ranting about Apple and close up this episode?
I think so.
I think it's time.
It's probably a good time.
I think Andy already stepped over the line, so maybe we can close that line right now.
We can revisit these topics in other shows as need be.
Yeah, I think I sounded really good today, though.
Well, and if we were truly closing out in the right fashion, then I would have to like take off my sweater and take these out again.
No.
I think we're good.
I'll save you the trouble. So.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for watching.
Us rant about Apple and other things.
Thanks for watching DTLT today. We will see you next time.